The receptionist laughed first. It was the kind of laugh meant to travel just far enough for the woman standing across the reception desk to hear it. Within seconds, two other
She
women
doesn't
joined
get it.
in. What exactly are you here for? The question was followed by another laugh. The pregnant woman adjusted the worn strap of her handbag, keeping one hand protectively beneath her stomach, as she answered with quiet confidence. I have an interview. Another receptionist looked at the printed invitation in her hand.
You are not going to believe what this says.
Before exchanging a smirk with her colleague. An interview. She slowly looked the woman up and down. You expect this company to hire someone who's about to have a baby. The lobby became strangely quiet. A few applicants sitting nearby pretended not to listen, but every pair of eyes drifted toward the reception desk. The pregnant woman lowered her gaze for only a second before looking back up. I only came because I received an invitation, and I need the job. She simply wanted the opportunity she had earned. Unfortunately, opportunity wasn't what was waiting for her that morning, but humiliation. What none of those women, either applicants, noticed was that a well-dressed Korean man had just stepped through the company's revolving doors. There was nothing about him that demanded attention, but he paused only long enough to observe the scene unfolding before him. No one greeted him or asked him who he was, and for reasons that would soon change every life in that lobby. The headquarters of Seong Capital stood among the tallest buildings in the city's financial district. From the outside, it reflected everything people associated with success. Employees dressed with immaculate professionalism. Clients from around the world trusted the corporation with billion-dollar contracts. Inside, at precisely 9 o'clock that morning, applicants began arriving for interviews scheduled by the company's administrative division. Among them was 28-year-old Glory. She arrived almost 20 minutes early, because she had learned long ago that punctuality is a good start, and arriving late often gave people another excuse to judge her before they even learned her name. She wore a business outfit she owned. A neatly pressed blue blouse beneath a dark blazer that no longer buttoned comfortably over her pregnancy. Her shoes had been polished the night before until they almost looked new. Everything she wore had been carefully prepared. She believed respect began with preparation, even when life had not been respectful to her. Her pregnancy was impossible to ignore. 6 months long, every step reminded her that carrying new life also meant carrying responsibilities that could not wait. She had spent weeks submitting applications across the city. Most companies never replied. Some rejected her the moment they saw her in person, while others politely claimed the position had already been filled. Still, she continued searching. Not like she enjoyed rejection, but giving up was never an option because her lover and the father of her unborn child got involved in a car accident which led to his death. She was now alone, and the child she carried deserved stability and dignity. When the invitation from Seong Capital arrived 3 days earlier, she had stared at the email for nearly 5 minutes before believing it was real. For the first time in months, hope felt stronger than fear. She entered the building believing this morning could change her future. Meanwhile, she had no idea it would, just not in the way she imagined or expected. The receptionist accepted her interview letter then. Her polite smile disappeared almost immediately. She looked from the paper to Glory's pregnancy, then back to the paper again. You applied for the administrative operations position. Yes, the receptionist frowned. You didn't mention this. She gestured toward Glory's stomach. Glory answered calmly. It wasn't relevant to the application. A third employee laughed under her breath. I've seen confidence before. She folded her arms. But this is something else. Glory remained standing calm. She had promised herself before entering the building that no matter what happened, she would not lose her composure. Across the lobby, a Korean man continued watching without saying a single word. His expression never changed, and his eyes simply followed every sentence, laugh, and insult. And as the minutes passed, Glory stood quietly before the reception desk, resisting the urge to tighten her grip on the folder in her hands. Inside were neatly arranged copies of her resume, certificates, recommendation letters, and the interview invitation that had brought her there. Every document represented years of hard work, and yet none of them seemed to matter. The women behind the reception counter had already reached their verdict. The receptionist holding Glory's invitation leaned back in her chair and sighed dramatically. I honestly don't understand why human resources keep scheduling interviews like this. Her colleague looked over. What do you mean? She tilted her head toward Glory. I mean, look at her. The second receptionist didn't bother lowering her voice. I don't have to look twice. A third employee, nearby, wandered over with obvious curiosity. What happened? The first receptionist smirked. Our next applicant thinks she's about to start a corporate career. The three women laughed. Glory remained silent. One of the applicants seated across the lobby glanced up from his phone, then quickly looked away. Another shifted uncomfortably in her seat, but said nothing. No one wanted to become part of the confrontation. The first receptionist tapped a perfectly manicured fingernail against the interview letter. So tell me something. Glory met her eyes. Yes. Who's taking care of your baby after you get hired? Glory answered politely. I've already made arrangements. The receptionist chuckled. Oh, you've planned everything. Yes. What about the father? The lobby grew quieter. Glory hesitated for only a moment. My personal life isn't related to today's interview. That answer seemed to amuse them even more. Oh, so there isn't one. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Another receptionist folded her arms. You know what I think. She looked around, as though inviting everyone to join the conversation. I think companies waste too much time trying to look compassionate. Her eyes settled on Glory again. Someone in your condition isn't an investment. It's a liability. Several people in the waiting area lowered their heads. The words were cruel. Glory drew in a slow breath. I came because your company invited me. I've respected everyone since I walked through those doors. I'd appreciate the same respect. For the first time, the smiles behind the desk began to fade. The lead receptionist narrowed her eyes. So now you're lecturing us? No, I'm asking to be treated fairly. The receptionist pushed her chair back. Fairly? She stood. Do you know how many qualified people apply here every week? Glory nodded. I'm sure there are many. And yet you walked in here expecting special treatment. I've asked for no special treatment. You already got it. I don't understand. The receptionist gestured toward Glory's pregnancy. People are going to pity you. They'll want to help you. They'll overlook your shortcomings. Glory answered softly. I don't want pity. I want an opportunity. The sentence landed harder than anyone expected. For a brief second, no one spoke. Even the applicants watching from across the lobby seemed caught off guard by the quiet conviction in her voice. Across the polished marble floor, the Korean man remained where he was. He never interrupted. But every sentence was finding its place in his memory. He noticed details other people ignored, which was the trembling fingers Glory tried to hide whenever another insult was thrown her way. The way she instinctively rested one hand beneath her stomach whenever the conversation became tense, as though shielding the child she carried from words no unborn child should ever have to hear. The restraint in her voice, and not once had she insulted anyone neither raise her voice. Meanwhile, the reception staff seemed increasingly determined to provoke exactly that. The lead receptionist stepped closer. So let me guess, you expect us to believe you're qualified? Glory nodded once. I believe my resume can answer that. Oh, your resume. The receptionist lifted the folder slightly. I haven't even looked at it. She tossed it onto the counter without opening it. I didn't need to. Another burst of laughter followed. The papers inside shifted from the impact. Glory instinctively reached for the folder, straightening it with careful hands before quietly placing it back on the counter. She didn't complain. She simply refused to let the work she'd spent years building be treated carelessly. The Korean man noticed that too. For the first time that morning, his eyes hardened with disappointment. The kind that comes when people entrusted with responsibility forget the dignity that should come with it. And still, he waited. The lead receptionist slid the interview invitation back across the counter. We're done here. Glory looked at the envelope. I'm sorry. I said we're done. My interview hasn't started yet. It won't. Glory frowned slightly. I received an official invitation, and I'm telling you, there's no position for you. One of the other receptionists crossed her arms. You should have stayed home, another chimed in with a smirk. Or maybe gone shopping for baby clothes, instead of wasting everyone's time. The women laughed again. Glory closed her eyes for a brief moment, choosing her next words carefully. When she finally spoke, her voice remained calm. If the position has truly been withdrawn, I'll leave. The receptionists exchanged amused glances. But, Glory continued, I would appreciate hearing that from human resources, not from someone making assumptions about me. The lead receptionist's smile vanished. Are you calling me a liar? No, I'm asking to speak with the department that invited me. The receptionist leaned forward. You don't seem to understand how things work here. No. I understand exactly why I came. And I also understand that I've been standing here for nearly 15 minutes.
But nobody has asked about my qualifications.
A young man seated in the waiting area slowly lowered the resume he had been reading. Everyone could feel the conversation becoming more dangerous. The receptionist's pride had been wounded, and she wasn't used to being challenged. You know what? She snapped. I've had enough. She pointed toward the revolving doors. Leave. Glory remained where she was. I'm still requesting to speak with human resources. I said leave. I'd rather hear it from the department that contacted me. The receptionist slammed both palms onto the marble counter. You think you're entitled because you're pregnant. Glory shook her head. No, I think every applicant deserves to be treated with respect. That answer only fueled the receptionist's anger. She stepped around the reception desk until she was standing directly in front of Glory. The distance between them was barely an arm's length. You've caused enough of a scene. I haven't caused any scene. Oh, really? The receptionist raised her voice deliberately. Everyone here has watched you argue with us for the last 15 minutes. Several applicants looked at one another. They knew that wasn't true. Glory had barely raised her voice, but no one spoke, all avoiding to become involved. The receptionist turned toward one of her colleagues. Call security. Glory looked stunned. Security? Yes. You refused to leave after being asked. Only asked to speak with human resources. You've been disruptive. Haven't. You've intimidated the staff. Glory stared at her in disbelief. How? The receptionist folded her arms. Doing it right now. First time in that morning. Glory felt her composure begin to crack, not due to fear, rather helplessness. She had done everything she could think of and remained respectful, endured every insult, and now she was being accused of behavior she hadn't displayed. She slowly lowered one hand to her stomach. The baby shifted gently beneath her palm. That tiny movement reminded her why she had come. She wasn't fighting for pride, but for a chance to build a better future for baby. Taking a slow breath, she spoke carefully. I won't argue with you. I will defend my character. I have not insulted anyone. Either shouted. Simply came because your company invited me. If you still want me to leave, leave. I'll leave knowing I treated everyone here with respect. Words echoed through the lobby. Even the receptionist behind her looked uncomfortable. The lead receptionist, however, refused to back down and took another step closer. So now you're trying to make us look like the bad guys, huh? Glory answered quietly. I don't have to. The receptionist's face flushed with anger before anyone could react. She lifted her hand, just enough to make her intention unmistakable. Several applicants gasped. One woman in the waiting area half rose from her chair. Glory didn't move. She looked directly into the receptionist's eyes and spoke with a calmness that surprised everyone. If you're woman enough, let your dirty hands touch me, and then I will make you understand that my endurance isn't weakness. She paused, then also be prepared to answer for it. Receptionist hesitated, while her hand remained suspended in the air. The entire lobby seemed frozen, and that was the moment a calm, unmistakably firm voice broke the silence. That's enough. The Korean man who had been standing by the pillar, and then he walked closer to receptionist's desk. What's happening here, if I may ask? The lead receptionist turned to him and said, Mister, are you here for acquires or to stick your nose to matters that doesn't concern you? The Korean man nodded. Oh, I see. I guess you all are way out of my league, arrogant fools. The receptionist replied, What did you just call us? He smiled and said, You heard me right, and since you all can't explain what is happening here, then I will have to call your boss down here. The receptionist smiles loud. Who do you think you're to call my boss down here in a hurry, huh? He pull out his phone and make a call. And in less than 5 minutes, their boss arrived and was quickly rushing to the Korean man and said, Boss, what brings you here today? The receptionists and every other applicants went still, because they all couldn't understand the drama that was unfolding. What none of them realized was that the quiet stranger standing before them had the authority to change every career in that lobby with a single sentence. His name was Ja-seong. The receptionists stared at each other in disbelief, hearing their boss call Ja-seong boss, the same man she has just disrespected earlier. Finally, Ja-seong spoke, "Mr. Walter. I was asking the employees what was actually happening here, but I didn't get a fair answer, though." Then Mr. Walter replied, "My apologies, sir. They do not know who you're." "They're just ignorant, sir." "Oh, I see. So respect is only giving to the ones that are rich." "Is that how the company operates?" Ja-seong said. "No, sir," Mr. Walter replied. Then he turned to receptionists. "Do you all know this owner of the building you standing on?" Their faces were filled with shock and fear. Then Mr. Walter quickly asked them to start speaking. The lead receptionist quickly pointed toward Glory. "This applicant has been causing problems since she arrived." Another receptionist nodded eagerly. She became argumentative. "We've been trying to calm her down." A third employee added. She refused to cooperate. Ja-seong listened without interrupting while his eyes moved from one employee to the next. Then, settled on Glory, she stood quietly, clutching her folder against her chest. Her eyes betrayed exhaustion. He gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. Then he looked back at the reception staff. "I see." His voice remained calm. "So." He paused just long enough for the silence to become uncomfortable. "That's the story you've chosen to tell." Lead receptionist spoke. "Sir, we've been nothing but professional." Politely explained that there was no suitable position available, but she refused to leave. Another receptionist nodded immediately. "She kept arguing with us. We're only trying to protect the company's image." A third employee added. Some of the applicants were beginning to feel uncomfortable. Several of those applicants exchanged uneasy glances. None of them had said any such thing, but once again, no one corrected the lie. Ja-seong kept listening, and his face revealed nothing. He simply looked from one employee to another as though giving each of them every opportunity to tell the truth instead. They continued digging themselves deeper. "You know how these situations are. Sometimes people become emotional." She glanced toward Glory. "We understand she's pregnant. Really do. That doesn't give anyone the right to disrupt the workplace." Glory slowly lifted her eyes. She wanted to speak, but something about the Ja-seong calm expression made her stop. She felt no need to defend herself. Ja-seong finally spoke. "Have all of you finished?" The three receptionists nodded. "Yes, sir." He gave a slight nod of his own. "Good. Then I'd like to ask a few questions." When Ms. Glory entered this building, his voice remained calm. "Did she insult any member of staff?" The receptionist hesitated. "Well, no." She raised her voice. "No, but," he gently lifted a finger. "I'm not finished." Lobby had become so quiet that even the sound of the elevators opening in the distance seemed unusually loud. When she arrived, she threatened anyone? No, she used abusive language. They three employees look at each other. Did she refuse to identify herself? Not actually. He nodded thoughtfully. So the disturbance began. "After your conversation with her." No one answered. He continued. "Any of you ask about her qualifications?" Silence. "Any of you open her resume?" The lead receptionist looked at the folder still resting on the reception counter. "Any of you contact human resources to confirm her interview?" Again, silence. Ja-seong's expression never changed. "And yet, you decided she wasn't suitable for employment. And when I step in to ask what the matter was, you showed me your disrespectful attitude, correct?" The lead receptionist swallowed. "I'm deeply sorry, sir. I didn't know. And we were trying to save the company's time." He looked directly into her eyes. "By doing whose job?" She had no answer. Another receptionist quickly stepped in. "Sir, we were only using our judgment." "Judgment." He repeated the word quietly. "Interesting." He took 2 slow steps toward the reception counter. His gaze settled on Glory's folder. Without asking permission, he picked it up. The papers inside had shifted from where it had been carelessly tossed earlier. He straightened them carefully. Every certificate, and only after arranging them neatly did he begin reading. The lobby remained completely silent. The receptionists exchanged nervous glances. One by one, the confidence they had displayed only moments earlier began to disappear. Ja-seong turned the first page, then another. His eyes moved steadily across every qualification, every previous employer. Finally, he reached the recommendation letter. He read it from beginning to end, then he looked up. 5 years. He spoke almost to himself. 5 years in administrative operations. He turned another page. Employee Excellence Award. Another page. Advanced certification in office management. Outstanding performance reviews. He closed the folder gently and looked at the reception staff. Tell me, which of these qualifications became invalid because she is pregnant? No one answered. His eyes settled on the lead receptionist. You seem to be the loudest and very certain she wasn't suitable. I'd like you to explain exactly which part of her experience failed to meet this company's standards. Receptionist opened her mouth. Nothing came out. A bead of sweat appeared near her temple. For the first time that morning, she realized this conversation was no longer under her control. Ja-seong looked at the receptionists. I witness everything myself. Hearing those words, the receptionists began trembling, knowing that they even added more fire by lying. I arrived 11 minutes before my scheduled meeting. I chose to enter through the main lobby. I wanted to see my company the way every visitor sees it. His eyes moved from one receptionist to the next. What I witnessed was not professionalism. It was prejudice, arrogance, worst of all. It was cruelty disguised as authority. No one dared interrupt him. He turned toward Glory. She still stood exactly where she had been from the beginning. Her interview folder rested quietly against her chest. Ja-seong inclined his head slightly toward her. Glory, I owe you an apology. Entire lobby fell. He continued. You came here expecting to be evaluated on your qualifications. Instead, you were judged by people who never earned the right to judge you. Glory shook her head gently. You don't owe me an apology, sir. He looked at her. I do. This company carries my name. When someone enters this building, they should leave with their dignity intact. Failed to ensure that happened today. First time in that morning. Glory felt her eyes begin to sting because someone in authority had finally acknowledged what had happened. Ja-seong turned back toward the reception desk. The lead receptionist's hands were trembling. Sir, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. He raised a hand gently. I know. You didn't know who I was from the beginning until your boss introduced me, and yet you all decided to lie to yourself, trying to defend yourselves. She nodded desperately. Yes, exactly. He looked at her for several long seconds. That is precisely the problem. She frowned, confused. He continued. You believed the woman standing before you had no influence, one important who would defend her. So you gave yourself permission to humiliate her. His words landed with devastating precision. If you had believed she was the daughter of a minister, or the wife of an executive, would you have spoken to her the same way? The receptionist lowered her head. She couldn't answer, because everyone in the lobby already knew the truth. Ja-seong's voice softened. I have spent years building this company outside my world principles. My greatest investment was never this building. It was the people inside it. His eyes rested on the reception staff. This morning, you became my greatest disappointment. No one moved. The reception area, usually alive with ringing phones and cheerful greetings, had become so still. The lead receptionist lowered her head, tears welled in her eyes. Sir, I'm truly sorry. Made a terrible mistake. Another receptionist quickly stepped forward. We all did, sir. It won't happen again. The third employee nodded repeatedly. We promise. Ja-seong regarded them quietly. Years of leading ruthless businesses had taught him that apologies often arrived only after consequences became unavoidable. He wasn't interested in apologies born from fear. He turned toward the Mr. Walter. Is the assistant operations manager position still vacant? It is, boss. We've been searching for the right candidate for almost 3 months. Ja-seong said, today the right candidate is present and she's qualified for it. Her papers speak a lot of her ability. The entire lobby froze. Ja-seong looked at Mr. Walter and said, prepare an employment contract. He then looked back at Glory. As of today, I would like to offer you the position of assistant operations manager at Seong Capital. A second. Glory simply stared at him. She wasn't sure she had heard correctly. Her voice caught. I'm sorry, sir. You say assistant operations manager. I did. Tears gathered in her eyes before she could stop them. These were tears of relief after months of rejection and countless unanswered applications. After doors that had closed before she could even introduce herself, Ja-seong spoke gently. You earned this opportunity with your qualifications. Certainly not because of what happened today. Mr. Walter smiled. I completely agree, boss. Then Ja-seong slowly turned toward the reception desk one last time. His expression became serious again, and now, there is one final matter we must address. 3 receptionists felt their hearts sink. They knew. This conversation was no longer about Glory but them. The 3 receptionists stood shoulder to shoulder behind the marble desk. Only an hour earlier, they had carried themselves with effortless confidence. Now, none of them could bring themselves to meet Ja-seong's eyes. Mr. Walter quietly closed Glory's file and stepped aside. He knew this was no longer an interview and it was a lesson in leadership. Ja-seong folded his hands behind his back and his voice remained calm, effective and immediately. The current front desk supervisory assignment is revoked. Lead receptionist closed her eyes. She had expected those words. Still, hearing them hurt, Ja-seong continued. She will be reassigned to the janitor field. The receptionist slowly nodded with tears. I understand. Ja-seong turned to the remaining 2 receptionists. As for both of you, you encouraged the behavior instead of stopping it. You laughed and joined in, abandoning the professionalism this company expects. Neither woman attempted to defend themselves. You both are also reassigned to the janitor field. If I ever receive another complaint involving either of you, he allowed the sentence to trail off, they understood. Every word then he turned toward Mr. Walter. The front desk is the first impression every visitor receives. It should never again become a place where people are measured by appearance instead of ability. It will be reorganized immediately. Yes, boss, Mr. Walter made careful notes. Then Ja-seong faced Glory once more and she still seemed overwhelmed. She was still trying to process everything that had happened. Ja-seong smiled gently. MS, Glory, she looked up. Have one final request. Anything, sir, when you begin your position. I don't want you to remember today because you were insulted. I want you to remember today because you refused to become like the people who insulted you. Glory felt tears fill her eyes again. Remember, I promise. Then he nodded. I believe you. To everyone's surprise, he extended his hand, not as a mafia king nor as the owner, simply as one professional welcoming another. Glory looked at his hand for a moment before shaking it. Welcome to Seong Capitals. The first time since she had walked into the building, she smiled. Outside the walls of Seong Capital, many people feared his name. They knew him as a man who ruled a powerful criminal empire with unwavering discipline. They whispered stories about the ruthless Korean mafia boss whose enemies rarely received second chances. Inside this building, however, he demanded something far more difficult than fear. He demanded integrity. The elevator doors closed. The lobby slowly came back to life, and applicants returned to their seats. Employees resumed their work. Yet no one who had witnessed that morning would ever forget it. Even I, Charles, the writer and director, wouldn't forget that morning. See you all in the next one. God bless you all.